Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Z Lord podcast. This is teZa going solo, season 3. Carter, my co-host of many years, is on a sabbatical, and he's so happy about that. And I am too, because I get to explore some things really deeply that I've been wanting to address, but in a conversation with another person, sometimes you go off on tangents or you have to go cautiously, I think would be the word. So today, there's a lot of people who are feeling upset or wondering or curious about what's going on in the world. And so I thought I'd talk about what is it that you think about, what is going on in your mind. Because, there's a very, very well-known adage that you are what you think. Okay, you are what you eat too, but you are and you become what you think about. So what you concentrate on with your mind, your thinking implement, is what you really do become if you haven't already become concretized and cemented into your opinion and stand strong against everybody else who has a different opinion, which is not what I'm talking about today. Today, I'm really addressing the fact that it's the spiritual way to be, to always have the opportunity to grow, to learn, to soar higher in our perspective, in our thinking, in our open-mindedness, in our open-heartedness. And in order to do that, one has to sometimes really practice freedom within our own selves, to perhaps look at things from a different point of view, instead of clinging to what we have already determined is the way. It's the only way. And so therefore we don't have the ability to see other people's perspectives or another cultures, or when that day comes, another planets. So why did I put that in there? Well, I have been lucky enough, I do believe it was my lucky day, to be with two other friends in my 20s on the beautiful island of Nantucket. We were surf fishing when all of a sudden we witnessed this spectacle in the sky. And it truly was visitors from another world. There's no other way to explain it, folks. I'm just going to be honest. So if you're not into this kind of thing, you might want to just shut this podcast off. But I don't know. I forget the new term. It's not UFOs. It's something unidentified, whatever. But they were real, and they were there, and they stayed all night. And I can describe it, but I have not kept it a secret. I've talked about it on other podcasts. I talked about it in my writing. And so just briefly, and I did check with my other two friends after this event happened. It was in the late 60s, like 69, I believe, or, right around down. We were sending people to the moon. As you know, the first real endeavor into space was the man on the moon. And so maybe other creatures from other places were watching and seeing, there's some activity going down there on that little blue ball floating in space. I think we'll go and check it out. But there had been sightings before, because when I was a child, my parents and my sister and I were living in a very, very small town in the Midwest, but it was right outside of Chicago in Illinois. And my mother, who was a reporter for our little tiny town paper at that time, she was outside, probably just hanging wash or something, as we did in those days. Nobody used a dryer. We just used to hang our clothes on the clothesline after putting them through the wringer washer. Primitive days, right? This was in the 50s, probably, I don't know, maybe 56 or 7. I was less than 10 years old, and I was born in 47. When all of a sudden, my mother called out to my father, "Come on out here and check this out." This is what she told us years later, because she did not tell us as children. My sister and I found this out only when we were probably in our 30s, because my mother didn't want to alarm us. But she wasn't alarmed. She thought, wow, what an amazing thing to witness this. So my father went rushing out to the backyard and joined my mother and saw, this is truth, friends. I'm not making this up. Right above our house, like a hen sitting on its egg, was a ship. And my father, God bless his soul, a very straight person, did not have any metaphysical bents, but he was always open to wondering, a true agnostic, he called himself. He described it to me as an adult. It was round, just like they have in the comics, but he could see behind some kind of a translucent panel, shadowy figures. There were creatures in there, and he could hear a humming noise of some kind of propulsion system. And they witnessed it, my mother and father, and watched it for however long it took to absorb the fact that this was a reality, this was happening, and it was not way, 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 way up in the sky. It was directly hovering over our tiny little suburban house, which was in a small town that wasn't even incorporated in those days. All it had was a few bars and one or two gas stations, and that was it. And then whoosh, it quickly sped in that propulsion, unbelievable thrust that we often see portrayed also in renderings of visitors from other places. And it went directly over the field that was in front of our house and hovered over what was our parish church and stayed there until it went somewhere else. And later, my mother, who was the reporter, was getting reports from all over the area, the radius around Chicago, Illinois, and wherever, I don't know how many miles out, but she received many reports that evening that other activities of that sort were reported. So, getting back to my experience, I already was open to believing this. So when I saw what was happening in the sky, my mind did not close. My mind did not just become resistant. My mind actually said, this is true. What my parents told me was just a little snippet of what could be, because what I saw was a spectacle that changed my life, that made me feel forever afterward that I and all of you and all of us in the universe are not alone, that we share this magnificence called existence, and that we are not always to be in a state of fear, but to choose to be in a state of openness and curiosity and possibilities, and not having such strong opinions that we say, no, that can't be what you're saying. It's my way. So, okay, enough of the prelude. Here is what I saw. So we were on a beach on Nantucket, darkness everywhere. There were no houses. And all of a sudden we noticed there were lights up in the sky. Now, I don't mean close in the sky. This was happening out of probably our atmosphere. Now, I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you the amount of miles, but it was way up there. It was like, one might have thought it was a star or a satellite. Sometimes people think, oh, they're just satellites. But this was a formation, and this was a continuous pattern of lights that stayed all night until the dawn came. So these were not satellites. These were stationary lights. And there was one major beam of light that was brilliant, like a diamond in the sky. Diamond, say diamond. We're diamonds in the sky. I'm thinking of that song by Rihanna. Yes, it was diamond-like, and it was continuously pulsing with brilliance. And I call that the mothership, because that was the center of all activity. And to the top and to the bottom of it, so I can't give you the points of the compass where it was, and an astronomical kind of location-wise. It was just up there in the sky. And when you're like a young 20-year-old and you're having your mind blown, and you're not high on drugs or alcohol, and you're witnessing something that's a phenomena, then your mind kind of goes in just irons. You just are absolutely in awe, and you let this come in with the possibility of reality because you're witnessing it. It's not somebody telling you. You're actually there. So on the top and the bottom of what I call the mothership with its brilliant white diamond-like light were what I call the lieutenant ships. They had to be ships. I mean, they weren't planets because they weren't there in the morning when the sun came. Doesn't mean that they weren't up there, of course. It just meant that we could not see them any longer because they were so far up in the atmosphere that you could not see whatever vehicle or entity it was, but it wasn't there the next night because we went out and checked. So to the top and the bottom of the mothership's light were two what I call the lieutenant ships, and they were pulsating with different kind of lights and diminished light. There was even color. I don't exactly remember if it were red, green, not blue. I remember that it was either red or green, not white. And it was a lighter color than the brilliance of the mothership. And they were ever so slowly going vertically up and vertically down, as if they were hovering above and below in the location from where I was on the beach in Nantucket, hovering in a vertical way up and down and in unison. So they would both go out together in an expanded way vertically and come back together closer to the mothership in a very slow way from Earth. Now, out there, who knows how fast they were going, because we're talking a long way outside the atmosphere. And by atmosphere, I mean the breathable stuff that we know of as oxygen and all the other elements, and where jets fly and where we see the clouds. That's the atmosphere. So out there, whatever that is, space, is it actually space? I don't know the terminology. But okay, so these lieutenant ships, so therefore there's three lights. There's the brilliant mothership light, and then there's the lieutenant lights going back up and down and pulsating with red and green. I remember red and green. And then there were these other things, like I call them reconnaissance ships, going choo, 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 in and out of the atmosphere, actually hovering or wherever they were going along the eastern seaboard, because we were on Nantucket. So that's about 30 miles or 50 miles, 30 to 50 miles offshore of Massachusetts. And they were going all along the eastern seaboard for as much as the eye could see, up and down. And I never counted the ships, but they were so numerous, it was not easy to keep track of. They were going in and out as fast as what my parents had described the ship that was hovering over my childhood home. So let me just say one thing, that once upon a time, this is not a fairy tale, by the way, I'm just using that as a figure of speech. I was at a party, and I was describing this event, because I've never kept it secret, to friends of mine, and somebody nearby was listening, and she came over and said, "Oh, I saw the same thing at that same time." It was like, late 69 or early 70. And she said she was over in Providence, Rhode Island, which is along that seaboard coast. She witnessed the same thing. The mothership, the lieutenant ships, and the reconnaissance ships. And, so she's the only other person that I have ever met in my life where she actually witnessed it. And surprisingly, because Providence is a major city, and there's a lot of lights whenever there's major cities, and that dulls out what you can see in space. But who knows, maybe she might have been in somebody's rural area. I didn't really quiz her a lot. And it was just a brief meeting. So that experience changed me, changed my thinking, changed my approach to life, changed my opinions about a lot of things, made me aware of the fact that I must always be open to possibilities. And my thinking, whenever I get into that mode of, oh, it's got to be this way. I remember what I learned in my 20s, my early 20s, that I do not know anything. I know nothing. And people who think they know how it is, how it really is, I don't trust them. And as I matured and became a yogi, meaning not just the poses, but understanding the messages in the scriptures of yoga, which are some of the most ancient, and from which other things developed. For instance, Hinduism came from the yoga scriptures, and Buddhism came from the yogic way of life. And meanwhile, of course, in other parts of the world, there were other thoughtful, mindful ways of approaching life rather than just our caveman, like, kill and live and make babies and die approach. We became more in tune with our mind's ability to conceptualize and think out and to understand what this reality is. And I became very interested in what I learned from the Eastern world as opposed to what I had been brought up in with the Western world, in particular the religion that I was brought up in, where you live a good life and you go to heaven or hell, which didn't feel that good to me. It felt too final. I always suspected that something else was going on. It couldn't be that black and white. And especially after knowing about the stillborn baby that my mother had before my sister and I were born, who unfortunately died as he was being born and did not receive the sacrament of baptism. And in the religion of my mother, which I adopted at the age of reason, that poor child was destined to being forever in limbo. And that means neither heaven nor hell. And, footnote, the Catholic Church has retracted this as, oops, a mistake. It's not in the Bible. It's not in Scripture. Somebody during the Middle Ages made it up, just another fear factor to thrust upon the masses so they behave. But it tormented me as a child, thinking, my poor brother, who I never knew, but he was with me. I felt his spirit, and I felt, what a shame. He's like in this place of neither there, neither that, and so I mistrusted all the what they call dogma that I heard. Things like, you're going to go to hell if you kiss a boy with your tongue. I mean, okay, the Ten Commandments it was nice to know you shouldn't kill somebody and you shouldn't covet your neighbor's bicycle and all that stuff. Those are good guidelines, but we can get them other ways besides being told we're going to go to hell if we break the tradition of being a good person. So, wow, I went off on a tangent myself. Where am I? Back to what I learned about being open to possibilities, being open to the wildest concept could be true. Why do we have to say no to anything? Why do we have to say, like everybody else does, oh, that person's good, oh, that administration's bad, oh, that food is questionable? And why can't we just feel for ourselves after we research as much as we can and come to our own conclusion, which I guess in some people's minds that could be an opinion, but to me, to always have the possibility of change or adaptation or modification, expansion upon that way that we think is most important. And case in point, like all my adult life, I have been doing the postures of yoga, which saved my life from the pain of having scoliosis really badly. And I have been basically pain-free as long as I do the yoga that I need to do. And I don't take medication for it, but over the years, I've had to adapt because I've had injuries, I've had surgeries, I've had immobilities and weight gain and, this and that and everything else. that makes it so that one way of being is really difficult. And so I've had to modify the way I approach my physical exercising, which is preferably doing yoga and hiking and biking and swimming. You know, I'm not an athletic person. Whereas Carter, my former co-host and dearly beloved, is out playing tennis right now, which is his passion. He loves it. He loves winning. He loves competition. That's just not my bag. And for people who like that form, it's good. But I do think that as we age, it's better to have some kind of relationship with our physical that we can do regularly and by ourselves and not contingent upon a team getting together or having to have the right kind of equipment or the right kind of place, the thing that you can do in your jail cell if you have to, which was the subject of my first nonfiction book, In the Eye, where I went to teach empowerment techniques to young girls who were in lockup. And they're miserable people, miserable, poor things. But by teaching them about accepting what is and not resisting and being in a state of anger and fear and just depression, to work with what you have right there. The young girls who came to my empowerment class, they learned that they could have a wonderful experience, even though they were locked up in prison. Isn't that amazing? So no matter what our circumstance is, no matter what's going on in the outside world, whether you're a political or you're a non-political, as I am, you can have the most amazing, expanded, heartfelt, warm, healthy, soul-satisfying experience that is imaginable if you learn or increase your ability to take in the possibility of anything happening instead of being sure that you know that this or that is going to happen. And in particular, I mean bad things, the people who are in fear right now, who are calling names and pointing fingers. And I'm included in that because I'm married to a Republican. And I get secondhand smoke. Well, I'm a secondhand victim of prejudice. I've had people defriend me because my husband, I'm not divorcing him. I let him be who he is. I just, try to curtail his needing to talk about politics because I'm not into that. And so my approach to life is that I don't know. And what if the wildest thing could be possible? What if we're on this spiraling upward evolution, us all together, this blended, beautiful family of humankind? What if we are really becoming spiritual instead of material? What if those of us who are thought leaders or light workers, whatever you want to call it, the spirit activists in the world, what if we can make a difference and make an impression on people who need to have something more than other people's strong opinions? And we just start evolving into this expanded way that encompasses being more helpful to healing, first ourselves, because all of us have been traumatized somehow in life. First, we give all that expansion in our consciousness to healing what is within us, our soul aches, our psychic leaks, whatever you call it, staying away from the vampires of people who leech us for our energy, our goodness, our belief in possibilities. First, we take care of healing ourselves. And by that, we are able to help heal not just those in our immediate circle, but every single person that we are in touch with, either physically, just by the smile on our face, and the sparkle in our eyes and the cheer and the golden diamonds sparkling from our aura. I mean, those things really are true. They emanate energy. Our emotions emanate energy. First, we influence those around us, and then, of course, everything else that you happen to do, like you take an airplane and you're emanating your positive possibilities to how many people in that plane? Hundreds. And if you're a social media person, you can do that to emanate hope and possibilities instead of joining the crowd, that whatever crowd you're in, like hurrah, hurrah, we won, or gee, we're pissed, we're lost, and hey, let's call that person a bad name. Oh, let's point the blame on them. And why? It's just such a damper to our creative possibilities. The energy of creativity, and by that I just mean whether you're preparing a good healthy meal instead of going to get more junk food, or going to help heal the world through discovering cancer remedies that really work, or helping another person who's looking to get sober, or another person who is just in such angst they can't see the way out of the box that they put themselves in because they go along with the party. That's what they've chosen to do. So there are so many possibilities, the endless possibilities of where we're going as a culture, as a joined human family. I call it the blended family of humankind. I think about it, I write about it, I paint it, I sculpt it, I do creativity for it, I create beauty about it, and sometimes things I create are not that beautiful, but they're thoughtful. They're like ideas. Like right now, my latest body of work is to really honor the extinct indigenous tribes of this beautiful planet. And the indigenous have taught me so much and continue to teach me so much. I refer to God as Great Spirit because to me, the mystery, as the indigenous call it, doesn't really even have a name. But Great Spirit is what the Native Americans basically refer to as the source. And that works for me. I'm an American. I have Native American blood in me. And it just resonates within my soul to call the source of all that is Great Spirit. Great Spirit. Great Spirit. And I have no doubt whatsoever that Great Spirit is also the same consciousness that those visitors from who knows where, maybe other universes, because we're finding out about the multiverse situation. We are not just a universe, not just one universe. There are multiverses out there as we discover more and more from these gigantic space telescopes. They're getting ready to launch the latest one made out of all infrared. I don't even understand the technology, but it fascinates me. It fascinates me much more than politics. What's going on with explorations of our interconnectedness with all on this planet and with all within existence. I mean, anything is possible. And the sooner that we stop squabbling and vying for every person to feel that their opinion is the right opinion, and we join forces and become more creative and more open to the endless possibilities and get on with this show of exploring and accepting what is happening out in the multiverses of this cosmos, the sooner we will all be a lot happier. Believe me, we need to get out of the box of thinking so small. I mean, come on, this is the 21st century. We are not just thinking the world is flat. We're not going to fall off the edge of this flat flatness when we take our ship out there. We, you know, we are all together in this. We need more togetherness. And I hope anybody who's listening to this is inspired to feel more connected to your fellow human on earth here, whether they have a different opinion than you about how to run the show, the administration, about politics, the talking about medicine or agriculture or anything, any subject. Just feel more combined with others on this earth. We are one. We are one beautiful, blended family of humankind. And I urge you to join me in this expansion of consciousness and just try it on to see how it feels. It's not scary at all. To not know is such a relief. To not be so sure that your way of thinking is the best way of thinking is freeing. It's just sublime. It's ecstatic. It's the best. Until next time. Om Namah Shivaya.